Well, good evening, everyone. This is Bob Gums bringing you the Concern Forum. And I always, I like to try and get into the habit of reciting this little passage here. Believe me, it has buku, as we used to say during buku relevance to what's happening in our country now. And it goes, if a nation expects to be ignorant and free in a state of civilization, it expects what never was and never will be. Now, I know that might sound like some kind of left wing liberal claptrap, but no, actually, that was written by Thomas Jefferson. Okay? Now, I have my problems with those, EJ, slavery being one of them. But in terms of how a government should function for the benefit of the mass majority of its people, uh, me and him are, pretty much the same. And I really wonder. Here goes an idea. Suppose, say, 75% of the American people had at least an associate's degree. Do you really think that we would have the type of people in Congress that represent us now? Do you really think that we would have the orange god sitting in the White House? If 75% of the American public had at least an associate's degree, think about it. Seriously, think about it. And remember, we have a president that just flat out said it publicly. I love the undereducated. And then he doubled down on that by saying, smart people don't like me. Now, what should that tell you? Okay. Uh, obviously, the man wants the masses of American people to be dumb. Okay. Which is something that the Republicans have really depended upon since the days of Lee Atwater. So you have to ask yourself, because I know people out there are suffering, and I empathize with that. I truly do. But the bottom line is that, hey, folks, you kind of bought that on yourselves. Now the government is shut down. Why? Because for once, finally, the Democrats have, I don't know, maybe they got some shots of I don't know, they went around, they went to the back door of the gym and started getting shots of testosterone. Okay. But they're talking about, hey, man, listen, you want to throw millions of Americans off of health care. And I think that was I think that's a good hill for them to decide to fight and die on, quite frankly, because healthcare is one of those biggies. Now, all you MAGA folks out there, I don't understand MAGA. And I'll be honest about it. Look, I'm a kid out the projects in Harlem, right? And I went to school. I went to Catholic school. And, I learned a few things, critical thinking, logic, what have you. And for the life of me, I don't understand MAGA. I really don't. Because MAGA supports people that doesn't give a damn about them, right? Now, I'm a Black American man, and quite frankly, the people in the upper stratosphere of American politics and government, they don't give a damn about me. I know that. But see, you working class MAGA people need to understand, they don't give a damn about you either. And that is a problem. And the problem that we have in this country is that we have the demon of, excuse me, twin demons of racism and gender, gender, I guess now you could say gender hatred. And I can assure you that until America gets those two things solved, hey man, we're not going to make any progress. Seriously. And if you really think that with the crazy stuff that Trump is doing is going to bring back factory jobs to America, well, I'm from Harlem in Manhattan, but guess what? I got a bridge going over to Brooklyn that I want to sell you. If you actually believe, okay, that Trump is somehow with these crazy ass tariff wars are going to bring back factory jobs, it ain't going to happen. It really isn't. Look, and I don't know how to put this delicately to my white working class brothers and sisters. You got screwed, man. Seriously. And I'm not going to try and get into this whole thing about, oh, well, you voted against the black Asian woman and blah, blah, blah. Hey, look, do I think that that should be held against you? Eh, part of me says yes. But I'm a student of history. And I know that it's damn hard to try and erase your original programming. See? We all have it, right? Black, white, yellow, brown, red. Doesn't make a difference. Okay, that's what happens. That's what happens in America when you build a society based upon conquest and racism. This stuff stays with you. And I know it's hard. I mean, hey, look, I got my hangups. I'm sure that my Caucasian friends have their hangups, and my Asian friends have their hangups. My Latino friends have their hangups. And, that's the way it is, but it doesn't have to stay like that. And I think the only thing that's going to give us a democracy, or at least give our democracy back, is that people have to recognize that, listen, you might not like the way I walk, you might not like some of the things that I say, but we're going to have to band together. Yeah, I think that what's happening, a situation has presented itself here in America that, particularly talking to my white American brothers and sisters, you got a choice. You got a serious choice to make. Either we pull together. What has it Ben Franklin said? Right? We either hang together or we hang separately. And then he went on when the woman asked him, "Hey, Dr. Franklin, have you given us a monarchy or a democracy or a republic?" And what did Ben say? He said, "Listen, man, it's a republic if you can keep it." And I tell you quite frankly, I do believe the only way you're going to be able to keep our democratic republic, we're going to have to, this craziness that has been left over from our original sin. And I know a lot of people will say, oh, well, you're talking about the original sin. You're talking about slavery. No, I'm not saying that. The original sin is when you came, okay, when colonial settlers came to this continent and they, basically killed, raped, and robbed their way across the whole continent. I'm from New York, right? I'm from Manhattan. All that, those names and whatnot, they all came from the names that indigenous people had for that land. And America is like, I don't know, you have a very bad wound. And instead of trying to clean it out, we just keep putting stuff on top of it, without getting to the bottom of the wound. And all that does, that just, I don't know, it kind of allows more poison to flow through the bloodstream. And that's the problem that we have now. And what Donald Trump did, um, don't get me wrong. I mean, he's probably one of the most ignorant bastards we ever had sitting in the White House. But he's very good at one thing. He knows how to divide people. And that's what he did. Seriously. All this stuff about the trans people and, blacks in the DEI and, some of these college educated women. All he did was basically play upon the fears and hatreds of working class white folks. And the funny thing is, let me ask you all a question. Now we've had these stormtroopers, these ICE guys, running through the cities of our country, locking up people, putting them, kidnapping people. We got like 1,000 folks down in Florida that were taken off the streets. Nobody knows where the hell they're at. All this craziness going on. Now, I'm going to ask you all something. How many of you people have gotten a pay raise? Wasn't that part of the Republican promise? Yeah, we got to stop these immigrants from coming here and taking American jobs. Okay, well, you've done that. What's her name? Christy Nolan, that woman that runs Homeland Security? With a joke. Mm, they did a good job. Seriously. They have grabbed up everybody that's non-white, and a lot of them they've expedited out of the country. Okay, so my question: you've gotten rid of all of these, basically Caribbean, Haitian, brown immigrants from so-called south of the border. Okay, you've done that. Okay, so where's the pay raise? I want working class white guys that, I'm on YouTube. Tell me, how much of a pay raise have you gotten? You have turned a large part of America into, what should I say, a concentration camp? I'm looking at the videos of ICE. It reminds me of what I studied in school about the what is it? The slave catchers, right? You've done all that. I want some white American to tell me, well, yeah, my life, the quality of my life and of my family is much better because of all these people that ICE has dragged off the streets. I haven't heard anything like that. I want to know, right? Have you gotten the pay raise? Have you been able to take care of Mima's hospital insurance or her nursing home insurance? Hey, if you got some kind of justification, yeah, we took a bunch of Latino sounding people off the streets. So where's the benefit? You know, I mean, this whole thing, according to Trump and his flunkies, this whole thing was done to basically help, especially white working class workers. See, and you have a few black knuckleheads like Stephen Smith and what's his name, Brian Daniels, and clowns like that. But generally, this whole thing was, yes, we have to protect American jobs. Well, you've done that, okay? America, the American brand has been degraded and dragged to the sewer because of your, uh, because of ICE's, how should I say, uh, slave catching techniques against Latino people. You've done all that. So where in the hell is the pay raise? Oh, you haven't. For those of you white working class folks, and you few, thank God, minority in the minority, black working class folks. Come on, man. We got YouTube here. I'm here. Show me where your pay has increased. Okay? If you are going to act like a barbarian, if you are going to basically betray everything that this country is supposed to stand for, you should get something out of the deal, right? Oh, you haven't. Your pay hasn't gone up. Your school, your public schools haven't improved. Your hospital, your hospital needs and availability and all that other good stuff, right? That hasn't changed. So why would you support this madness? Why would you support turning our streets into something out of 1938 in Central Europe, right, with the Nazi stormtroopers? And it really pisses me off. Let me get this off my chest. Uh, these ICE guys. I mean, they look like they bulk up and everything, but they shouldn't be such cowards, right? We have to hide our faces. What shit is that? Cops in New York walk the tough neighborhoods, walk the so-called mean streets every damn day without masks, right? And I don't understand if you're law enforcement. I mean, I don't see the FBI walking around with masks. It seems like Donald Trump, he gets his jollies off of trying to poke the bear. But I would say to Mr. Trump, be careful what you poke because you're going to keep up and you got a lot of veterans out there. And you have a lot of guys, veterans who are in the National Guard. And I don't think that they look kindly upon people trying to order them to kill their fellow Americans. All I'm saying is, I'm not trying to encourage the military to rebel or anything like that. All I'm saying is that they need to, that oath that we all took, they need to check out their oath to the Constitution. You know, military folks, you need to understand you don't owe any loyalty to the President of the United States. Your oath is to the Constitution. That's one of the things that makes us different from Nazi Germany. You senior officers, you got a lot of thinking to do. Seriously, you have a lot of thinking to do. And I respect you guys, you generals, you admirals. Hey man, I spent half my time in the Navy. I spent doing intel work in the White House and in the Pentagon. Okay, and you guys are the cream of the crop. You're the best that this country produces. You know your duties, right? You know law. You have a lot of thinking to do. Now, let's talk some other turkey. We have a couple of elections coming up. One is in November for mayor in New York City, and another one, I guess that's like next year for Congress. I'm out of the Fifth Congressional District in the Bronx. Okay, and let's talk about the mayor's race first. Mr. Zohan Mandami. Now, I noticed that Cuomo, former Governor Cuomo, is trying to attack Mr. Mandami because of, he came, he went back to Uganda for a family thing. I think it was a wedding or something like that. And they took a picture of Mr. Mandami standing next to a Ugandan government official. And apparently, Mandami's big sin was that he was caught taking the picture with this, I don't know, first or second prime minister, whatever. And Mandami was caught smiling with the guy, right? Mandami was born in Uganda. His family has a very good reputation in Uganda. And, he was just there for a wedding. Okay. Now, I guess Cuomo is trying to incite the gay community against Zohan Madami because in Uganda, um, which I don't agree with, but they have very, what I consider to be anti-progressive laws, things against gay people. Listen, how should I put this? Mondami is not running to be a member of the Ugandan Assembly or Parliament. Okay, he's running to be mayor of New York City. It's no different than when you had a lot of American politicians whose families came from like Eastern Europe, Poland. Belarus, all these various countries that were under the domination of the Soviet Union. Okay, and the man's home. He wanted to go to a wedding and enjoy his family. Okay, it wasn't, it was never meant to be a political statement. But let's turn it around now. Mandami went back to the old country. Okay, just like Irish do, Italians do, Germans do, Eastern Europeans do. Okay, he didn't come to Uganda to try and change Ugandan government policy. He came home for a wedding, right? Uh, we got to get off this nonsense about America being, hey, well, listen, if we don't like it, it's not good. Look, I believe everyone should have their legal and political rights. Okay? I'm not in the Ugandan parliament. I'm not in the what do you call it, Ugandan assembly, right? People in other countries they have to find their own way. Zohan was there for a wedding. Period. But I'm curious about Cuomo making comments about this. Cuomo is a guy, very educated, smart man, former governor. And he decided to represent an international war criminal to be his attorney. So I'm trying to figure out, if you're going to try and dump on Zohan Mandami for going home to a wedding, what do you say about a guy like Cuomo that willingly became a lawyer for a war criminal? Um, that New Yorkers, that should bother you, quite frankly. I feel that should bother you. we're coming to one of those crossroads in history. And New York City, being what New York is, um, we're going to have a major role in that. Am I saying that when Madami becomes mayor, that if the prime minister, I hate to try to pronounce his name because I don't want to disrespect anyone's name. Was it Nanyeda, whatever, Bibi, as they call it? Should Mondami try and have him arrested as an international war criminal? That's a very good question. But see, the sign is out there, okay? It is what it is. So I don't think that Cuomo has the right to criticize Zohan Madami for just going home. I don't think that that's right. And then on top of that, we know now that, and I'm so sorry to see this happen, that former Governor Cuomo, who's his biggest supporter? Some corporate bigwigs and Donald Trump. Donald Trump, the guy that continues to supply the government of Israel with the capacity to commit genocide in Gaza. And this it has nothing to do with anti-Semitism. Israel is a sovereign state, and I put down the sovereign state of Israel for what their government does. I also happen to know you've got a whole bunch of Jewish people that don't, they don't kind of what Bibi or Netanyahu, what he's doing with the genocide. So it ain't like a religious thing, okay? But it's kind of weird, Cuomo was trying to figure out what he can throw at Madami to make it stick. Frankly, as long as the Board of Elections doesn't, cheat, I believe that Mondami will be our next mayor. And then this is what really, one of the things that really bothers me. What Cuomo said was, "Oh, well, if New York goes with Mondami, they're going to catch a hard time from the Trump administration." I call it the Trump junta. Okay, but okay, you can say administration. Um, that should really frighten all New Yorkers. Why does the President of the United States feel that he has the right to publicly interlope into a local New York City election? I mean, isn't this supposed to be a democracy where the voice of the people rules at election time? Listen, let's be real about this. As Americans, as working class and lower income Americans, in terms of influencing government policy, we ain't got a whole hell of a lot going for us. But the one thing that we do have left is our vote. And if we want to vote for, I don't know, Jack Robinson, that's our right. Okay? That's the right that people, since 1776, that's the right that, 1775, that's the right that people died for. To be able to chart our own course. And I really have problems with a president that says, well, oh, you're a Democratic blue state, so I'm not going to allocate federal money to you. That's supposed to go to you. Uh, is that the proper activity of the chief executive in the democracy? To reward political friends and punish people who are not, who are not basically singing off the same sheet of music that he is. So I thought that's why the 13 colonies separated from Britain, so we can get rid of all that nonsense. MAGA people always freak me out because America pushed America, blah blah blah, America, right? And apparently, MAGA folks don't. I don't know if it's because they're not capable, but they don't really read American history, and they try to. And then their various school boards and what have you, they try and stop everybody else from learning American history. And I find that kind of weird, you know. But I think that Mandami, I think that he'll do a good job for the people of New York City, right? And, you know, on this particular subject, just something else I wanted to get in there, and that is this whole bullshit about, oh, well, Mondami wants to turn New York City into a socialist paradise and blah, blah, blah. All the bullshit. Like them four clowns on, what was it, Fox Network? Or what do they call themselves, the Five or whatever? They got the guy that he wants he wants to go to war against everyone that doesn't vote the way he thinks they should vote. And the other guy, he wants to kill all the homeless veterans. And what's the other guy? Gutfield. I don't know where the hell he's coming from. Um, the three pansies, as far as I'm concerned. If they ever saw a dead man on the field of battle, they puke. But anyway, I really, I really, that really concerns me. Okay, I think that Fox should be taken off the air. I mean, they've already lied. They had to pay almost $1 billion for their lie about the 2020 elections. Number one, but I don't want to inhibit anyone's freedom of speech. I believe that what we need to do, we need to bring back the equal time amendment because you're talking on the public airways. Remember, all the airways are public, right? Internet, television, radio, that's all public. And if you're going to espouse a point of view, the American people have a right to hear a rebuttal, quite frankly. I mean, I thought that's what democracy was supposed to be about. So I think that that's something for our Democratic elected folks to deal with, next time around. But I hear these people on Fox talking about, yeah, Obama. I mean, excuse me, same thing. He wants to bring in socialism with his grocery stores and all that. Listen, not too long ago, the majority of American farmers in this country decided that they were going to believe Donald Trump. And they put their votes, they put their political power and influence behind getting Donald Trump elected. Okay. Uh, they found out, I mean, they had a right to do that. Everybody has a right to participate in the democratic process. And that's what they did. But now, every day, more and more of them are realizing, hey, man, Trump really suckered us. And I'm getting ready to lose my farm. You know, that's been in the family for like 175 years. Now, how should I phrase this? Because I'm a human being. I'm empathetic. Unlike the late, I don't know, in, in my side of the fence, the late unlamented Charlie Kirk. I believe in empathy, right? But see, now these farmers are talking about getting a socialist handout because you voted for the guy that's wrecking your farms. That's wrecking your way of life. Okay, you voted for the guy that deported your help. The people that made you money, you voted for that. Now all your help has either been deported or they're in hiding. So that cost you. And now with this trade wars, the rest of the world is saying, listen, pal, you're only like 4% of the population. And we can get our soybeans from Brazil. And then on top of that, because of the fact that the president of Argentina has some of the same nutty ideas that Trump has, and he's up to his ass in alligators because this whole libertarian screw everybody else, that bullshit doesn't work. And some people in Argentina realize it. So Trump wants to help his buddy win re-election. And so he's shipping them 20 billion bucks. Now, let me understand this. You voted for Trump because you thought that you was going to get a big payday. It turned out that that was a lie. Okay. So now you're upset because of the fact that your ass is busted. You're broke. The bank is breathing down your necks. And unfortunately, the suicide rate among farmers in middle America has gone, I don't know, has it been like that? I don't know, the 80s? No one should joke about that. When a guy feels that he has nowhere to turn and that his only way out of the situation is commit suicide, that's not a good thing. That's not a funny thing. Okay? I'm very sensitive to that. I mentioned before a few videos ago, I lost my first son, my firstborn kid to gun violence. I know what loss feel like, and I empathize with the families of those farmers that felt that they have been backed up to the wall so much that they had to commit suicide. That's not a joke. That's real. And see, what am I supposed to say? What's the catchphrase now? FAFO? F around and find out? I don't feel comfortable constantly throwing that in people's faces. Okay? I guess I'm too soft. And maybe I know what loss feels like. I feel terrible for the farmers. And to me, that is an indication of how evil this whole Trump administration truly is, because they turn on their own. As a matter of fact, at this point in time, the people who are getting hurt the worst are people that voted for Trump. And, this whole MAGA crap. MAGA used to say to those families, the families of those farmers that, felt so backed up against the wall that they committed suicide. I mean, does MAGA have any kind of counseling program for farmers there in the heartland? I don't know. I think it's a reasonable question. But now, those same farmers are trying to get a socialist handout from Donald Trump. Or excuse me, from the United States government. Oh, okay. And see, this is where it really gets weird because the farmers are asking for a socialist handout. You got crop problems, you can't sell your stuff, you can't sell your harvest. you need help. So you go to the government and say, help, listen, boom, we voted for you, right? Help us. And the government under Trump, they like hemming and hawing, yeah, we're gonna hook you up down the road, blah, blah, blah. Right? In the meantime, this same Trump government is going to take 20 billion, send it to Donald's pal in Argentina, right? The farmers in Argentina, they're going, hey, well, this is great. And now we're going to sell our soybeans to China. Listen, I don't believe in that nonsense about America first. Okay? I'm educated in history enough to know what America first, the original America first. I know what it stood for. It was essentially a racist, anti-Semitic group that didn't want to annoy Hitler with complaints about human rights violations. That's what it was. Okay. So when you start talking about America first, that's kind of a turn on. Not because I don't believe in America as my country, but because I understand the fact that we live on the planet. We don't live by ourselves. America is 4% of the total population of the globe, right? We have to learn to work with other people in a respectable relationship. That's what's happening, in Africa, for example. You got Trump and I guess some of his corporate allies and probably some retired CIA or State Department types that are trying to instigate problems in South Africa between the Afrikaners, between the group called Coloreds, right? And it's all about trying to get into Africa, Southern Africa. Why? Because Southern Africa is a power, one of the powers in the whole BRICS thing, see? And I guess that irritates, Trump, quite frankly. Also, Donald wants to use Africa as a dumping ground for the people that he doesn't like being in America. And he's telling African nations, hey, well, you take these clowns because we don't want them. And remember, this is the same Donald Trump that referred to African nations as shithole countries. See, so now you understand why, I have problems with our international policy. Mhm. It's just so weird. So American farmers have to try and finagle and beg for a socialist handout while Donald takes 20 billion American dollars, gives it to his, I don't know, spiritual companion in Argentina, who then helps his farmers in Argentina sell the goods to China, which American farmers can't do because Donald decided to start a trade war with China. You figure it out. You figure it out. But see, by the same token, don't turn around and talk this bullshit about, oh, well, Madami, he wants socialism and all that. Hey, folks, America, guess what? We already have socialism. Problem is that it's socialism for the wealthy and for corporations, and it's market capitalism for its working folks. That's the problem. And I guess what they do, Trump and MAGA, they come out with all this crap about Christian nationalism and the white replacement theory and all that type of bullshit to keep working class Americans off balance. And they have you thinking that, oh, well, white working class, so we're so, they tell us that we're victimized, then our enemies are those brown and black people, which is bullshit. I might not be around to see it, but one of these days, black working class folks and white working class folks are just getting ready. We're going to be ready, just about ready to kill each other, and then they're going to look at each other, and it's going to dawn on them. The hell am I mad at you for? You ain't my problem. See, and when that day comes in America, that's when America can truly become a democracy. Finally, okay. And if we're going to be a democracy again, if we're going to be a democracy, we're going to have to get together. And I know we all have memories and beefs and what have you. But that's not going to help our children. That's not going to help our grandchildren. And if this country is going to ever be made whole, America, America's going to have to learn how to work together. Because as long as you have these appeals to racism, xenophobia, gender sexism, and all this other crap, you're always going to be able to find a Donald Trump or Charlie Kirk to basically keep people's eye off the main problem. And the main problem in this country, the main problem in America is that we have a maldistribution of wealth. You're not going to have a successful democratic republic when the majority of the wealth, right, or what it just goes up, what is it, the upper 10%? Some people say the upper 1%, but you can't have that. It can't work like that. And that's why we're having so many problems now. And I think that also because of this Epstein thing, Donald Trump is trying, excuse me, he's trying to pull every rabbit out of the damn hat. Hey, let's send the National Guard here to, Chicago and LA. And I do believe that the senior leaders of the military, it's going to come a point in time where they're going to have to stand up and say, look, no, see this is called the Constitution. This is what we go by. They got a thing here, posse comitatus. We're not policemen, see. And I don't know when that's going to happen. I I believe in the senior leadership of the Army, Navy, Marine Corps, Air Force. I believe in those men and women. I served under them, and generally speaking, they are decent, patriotic, good, educated people. And this nonsense, like you saw Pam Bondi, supposed to be the Attorney General, uh, testifying, and was it the Senate? All she wanted to do was be a smartass. The Senate has a job to do. That's in the Constitution. It's called oversight. And, I guess she felt safe being a smartass and not answering questions. But eventually, that's going to have to be dealt with. Plus the fact that the President of the United States is contemplating uh, granting a pardon to one of the biggest sex traffickers in American history. And this is from the party of family values, right? I mean, come on, man. People have to, and I know, oh God, how can I put this without sounding insulting? Because a lot of it's not the fault of the average citizen. But for like the last 30 years, the powers that be have done everything to dumb the American public down. Yeah, I said that. Okay. We have a situation where it's like 54% of the American people don't read on a sixth grade level. So what the hell do you expect? Why do you think a lot of politicians, when you talking about, not free or low cost higher education, especially Republicans, you say that around them, they squeal like hogs in the slaughterhouse. Because just like Trump says, I love the undereducated. I'm not knocking people uh, for being not that academically swift. I'm not knocking them per se, but I think that we have to understand what is happening in this country. And this whole business about keeping people ignorant, yeah. Listen, watch the politician that doesn't vote for funding education, that doesn't want to uh, make it, easier for people to get higher education. Keep an eye on that bastard, right? Because autocracy, dictatorship, what have you, they flourish on ignorance. And ignorance means that you don't know a particular thing. Okay? If I'm in the hospital and somebody starts talking about brain surgery, I'm ignorant because that's not, I don't know anything about that. And that's what's happened to America. Okay? We don't, we stop teaching civics in school, right? And a lot of times people just don't know. I don't, I don't get off into the whole thing about, oh, well, that so and so is racist. They did that because they're racist. No, because people, a lot of times, you were born into the world, and if you're educated to be ignorant, then, what the hell do you know? And I think the sin is that when you have a political leadership and a political party that does all they can, just like they got rid of PBS. That was part of the whole game plan, keeping Americans dumb about our history, right? And let me say something right now. There's no such thing as Black history. It's American history. Just like that idiot governor that you got in Florida, right? Oh, we don't want to teach anything that makes people feel bad. What? What kind of nonsense is that? Feel bad about what? The fact that you learn why things are the way they are? How is that supposed to make you feel bad? And it's, Maxwell talk about slavery. Like, yeah, just like every 4th of July, you talk about the damn Independence Day, right? But see, that's because that's something that makes you feel, a certain class of white Americans feel good. But you don't stop to think about how that affected Black Americans, how that affected indigenous people, how that affected women, right? And people need to learn that. You don't build a house from the midair, in midair, okay? You start from the basement and you work your way up. And that's what Americans need to do. You had some great, heroic white folks that fought and died in the cause of human freedom here in America. And we forget that at our peril. And see, this is part of the whole nonsense, the whole MAGA nonsense bullshit. Okay? That's why I say, no, what happened to Charlie Kirk is wrong. Okay? As far as murdering people, and we don't even know why. Be honest about it. Because if you trust these jerks that we have in charge of the, FBI, Justice Department, you're an idiot. But, Charlie Kirk was murdered and it was wrong. But this bullshit, even from, I'm a former Catholic, I'm in New York, Catholic schools, the whole bit. What's his name, Dolan? Carlos Dolan? He's an asshole comparing Charlie Kirk to St. Paul. I mean, come on. This is a guy that said that my mother has a brain smaller than a white male. How the hell was that St. Paul? I mean, come on. That's one of the reasons why I left the Roman Catholic Church when I came back from the Gulf War. Because I was into the whole Catholicism thing. I thought I was even going to be a priest at one time. It's back in the 60s, early 70s. But unfortunately, what's happened since that time, American Catholics, American conservative Catholics, they made common cause with these nutty ass evangelicals, the same people who at one time said that Jack Kennedy should not be president because he would take his marching orders from the Pope. But because of the fact that conservatives in the Catholic Church felt that they had to subordinate women, they made common cause of these assholes. And I saw that and I said, no, I can't be a part of that. So that's why I don't get into religion too much because I'm not religious. I believe myself to be a spiritual man, but that's why I left the Roman Catholic Church, quite frankly. Um, I felt that they wanted to march backwards in time, and I wasn't with that. But I think that Christ's Sermon on the Mount, when I read that, it stirs my soul, quite frankly. But that's me personally. But that's what happened to me, and my journey to redemption. I can't speak for anyone else. I don't have the right to do that. And any more than these damn evangelicals out in Oklahoma want everybody to, yeah, this is the Bible. You have to. No, that's not for that's not for public school, right? Our kids need to learn facts. They need to learn how to critically think, and that's one of the problems that we have in America today. People, oh, well, Trump, he's our savior, and they turn off their critical thinking skills. Those of us that ever really learned critical thinking skills. And that's why the country's in the mess it's in today. But we as Americans, we have to really look in the mirror, take a good look at ourselves, and see what certain people are trying to lead us into. And, that's not just about white demons. You got some black demons out there also. You got that young man, was it Fox, the Fabulous Five and whatnot, right? This guy doesn't know a damn thing, quite frankly, but he sits up there and he shakes his head and he nods his head. Yeah, we're breaking up the Latino families. And he said, okay, yeah, right on, Donald Trump. Yeah. See, I'm sorry, my parents were Republican activists, okay, and civil rights activists. And this garbage that we see, these same people that want to strip Americans from their health care, these ain't Republicans, okay? They have allowed themselves to return to some kind of neo-fascist organization. And I think that that is a damn shame for the Republican Party. Remember, the Republican Party started off as a group against slavery. Think about that. But we have to keep going. We have to stand up. And we have to believe in ourselves and what our country is supposed to stand for. Listen, it's getting late. And quite frankly, I'm getting hungry. So listen, take a look at me on YouTube. I hope you like what I have to say. If you don't, please make your comments. I mean, make your comments if you do like what I say. But either way, make your comments. And listen, I'll catch up with you next time. And in the meantime, take care of yourselves, take care of each other, and peace.